Hello, listener. So, you like scary movies? Well, it is a creepy night, and with all those crazy lunatics out there, well, you really shouldn't be alone. Ooh, you look so freaked out right now. Now I suggest you listen very carefully. Subscribe to ClassHorrorCast, or I'll gut you like a fish. Enjoy the show. I'll be watching.
Hey, I'm Aaron and welcome to another episode of the ClassHorrorCast. On the show we hear from a creative mastermind and filmmaker who created worlds we still visit in modern day horror. Leprechaun creator Mark Jones. Hear about how he brought an Irish mythical creature to the big screen that has since spawned a huge franchise and solidified Leprechaun as an icon of horror. We also hear about his work on Rumplestilskin and forgotten gem Triloquist from 2008. Mark has an undying love for the art of movies and horror to this day, and gives us his take on following your dreams, some inside scoop on the much anticipated Vamprechaun, his favourite movies, Wishmaster vs Leprechaun, and much more. My conversation with Mark Jones starts next. So, first thing I kind of always ask everybody is, can you remember the first horror movie or, I guess, horror-related experience that you might have ever had?
You know, I do. When I was a kid on TV, there was a movie. It was a kind of a cheap, low-budget black and white, and it was. I forgot the name, but it escapes me. Not Bride of Frankenstein, but it was a very creepy kind of a Frankensteinish monster, and I ran across it, you know, a couple of years ago, and I remembered that was it, and I wish I could find. Maybe I'll find the name. You can add it, but that really affected. It was just this, not even that good of special effects, but very scary. It almost gave me nightmares. It was like a female. It wasn't Bride of Frankenstein. It was like in the 60s or 50s. It was a very scary movie. And Exorcist actually jumps out as something that scared me quite a bit.
That Frankenstein movie, was it a version of Frankenstein, potentially?
Yeah, it was. It was sort of a rip-off. I think it was done in the 60s, and I just don't recall the name, and it's haunted me to this day. And my mom and I used to watch it because it would come on like in the afternoon. I'd come back from school, and we'd watch it together, and it was just, you know, I probably in retrospect is pretty cheap little drive-in movie, but it had a I just don't recall it. I just don't recall the name. It was, but I think it's sort of, people would know it. It became sort of a cult little thing, but I remember that having an effect on me. But you know, I used to watch everything that I could find in the movies and TV.
Would you say that it affected you, I guess, in a way where it intrigued you to watch more, or did it kind of turn you off the scary?
No. I knew it was movies. You know, I separated the reality from the movies. I just enjoyed movies, and always, as a kid, wanted to get involved in making movies and TV and stuff like that. I was just, you know, I was one of those kids that went out with a 16 millimeter Bolex camera, you know, in junior high and high school, and made short little movies with my friends. You know, I didn't have any family in the entertainment business, but I was just fascinated by wanting to make movies and television. And
I guess then, when did that start to become more real for you, in a sense?
Well, I got, you know, I loved animation too. I used to watch all the Disney cartoons and features, and I sort of was wrestling with, would I rather be an animator make cartoons, animated cartoons, or do I want to do movies? And right out of high school, I got into an animation studio called the Patty Freeling, and they used to do the Pink Panther cartoons. Frizz Freeling used to be a Warner Brothers director, and he and Dave DePatty had a studio that was doing Saturday morning cartoons in the 70s. And I got a job Xeroxing the animation drawings onto the cells, onto the clear plastic that the ink and paint girls would paint. So I was so excited that I got a job in an animation studio, and then I used to visit with the artists, and they would, I wasn't that good of an artist. That was the problem. I was fascinated by animation, but I just wasn't a good artist. And all the animators said, "Don't become an animator. Get into writing. That's where the power is. If you can write, then you can create things, and you can make movies." And so I ended up starting to write animation. I sold a script, and then had a pretty good career very early in life in animation, working at Hanna-Barbera on Scooby-Doo's and Captain Caveman and Filmation Studios and Ruby Spears. I spent a few years at Ruby Spears with Joe Ruby, who sadly passed away actually this year. I worked on Plastic Man and Super Friends and, like I said, Scooby-Doo and all these cartoon shows as a writer. And I realized that, I wasn't going to be an animator, and in animation, the writing, you write the scripts, but there's really no directing in the sense of going out there and shooting a movie. So I went from there into prime time to start to write live action. And that's when I came in the 80s to Glenn Larson brought me in on shows like BJ and the Bear and Sheriff Lobo and Fall Guy and Knight Rider. And I also worked on the A-Team and started writing a lot of television in the 80s. And then, but still wanting to direct. And I knew that I had to come up with some movie that I could make inexpensively enough that somebody would give me the money to make it and I could direct it. And that's kind of how Leprechaun came about.
And what would you say, like the first, I guess, kernel of an idea for Leprechaun? What made you go for that character over everything else?
Well, I don't know if in Ireland you guys get the Lucky Charms cereal.
Uh-huh.
But I used to see the Lucky Charms advertise Lucky Charms cereal, and it was that cute little leprechaun. Mm-hmm. And I started to do some research. I said, no one's done a horror movie about a leprechaun. They've done it, say Valentine's Day, Christmas, Halloween, Friday the 13th, but nobody's done leprechauns. And then I sort of did a little research and found out that sometimes they can be kind of mischievous and evil. And I said, this would be interesting to take a leprechaun and kind of make him a killer, killing people instead of being super nice. And that's how kind of Leprechaun came about. Nobody had made something for St. Patty's Day. And I know that works, with movies. If you've got a holiday you can tie your movie to. And so that's how that's where it started to write the script Leprechaun.
And I guess originally when you first started to come up with the story or the idea, originally I had seen, I'm not sure if this is correct or not, but it was more of a straightforward horror movie. There wasn't much humor in it.
Yes. The first draft was really horrific. He was a character. It wasn't. It was number 7, Leprechaun Origins, and I don't know if you're aware, but mm-hmm. I've always thought that was such a misfire, even though it was basically what I had first written, at least tone of more of a horrific creature, but I always, when I finally sold the script to Trimark, they greenlight it, and I was gonna direct it. I started to say, I want to make this stand out. I don't just want to do a one-off horror movie, and I always knew that characters are the key. Freddy Krueger, he's got a personality, and you need to create something that people want to see again, rather than just a killing machine. So I started to adjust it, and then when Warwick came in, Warwick Davis, I realized, he brought a lot to the table in coming up with, the silliness. And so we sort of collaborated and gave him a personality that we didn't take ourselves serious. And it's kind of, had some campy and comedy. And I really pushed to do that. And Trimark actually wanted it to be a little more horrific. And I wanted it to have more comedy. There actually is a number of scenes. I know I have a director's cut somewhere that before they made me take out 3 or 4 funny scenes, and I don't know where, it's got to be stored somewhere in some laboratory. But they wanted to kind of make it less comedy, but then I think that's what made the movie work. And then I was proven right when they went and did number 7, Leprechaun Origins,
Mm-hmm.
and they did it the way that they thought, and it tanked, and nobody liked it, and the fans didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But those are studio executives; they always do that stuff.
And did you?
So
I was just going to ask: did you, I guess, while in pre-production, or at what point did you know that you kind of had something with this idea? When was there I guess a light bulb moment where it kind of seemed like we might really be on to something here?
Everybody who starts a picture thinks their picture is going to be the best movie ever made. But the reality, it really, I knew we had something a little unique because it wasn't a straight ahead horror movie, and they did finally allow me to bring in the comedy and stuff. But I think where it really kind of clicked is when we started shooting. Probably the second week we went to location, and just the crew. It was interesting. They were a great crew. They had worked on a lot of low budget horror movies. This was $1 million movie, and that was considered sort of a low budget in those days. And they kind of would say stuff like, "This is really interesting. We've never more. This is so much fun, and this character, and we've worked on a lot of horror movies, and this one's kind of special." And of course, I'm thinking the crew is just doing it to kiss my ass and try to and I didn't know if they were sincere. But then I think as time went on, the crew gave it a sense that it was something unique. Not that it was incredibly special and great, but it was a little bit of a unique feel to it. I lit it with colors, kind of cartoon colors. I sort of wanted to make it like a live action Scooby-Doo, because I'd written Scooby-Doo, and even though you had monsters, there was comedy, and it was, cartoon colors. And if you look at the movie in the kitchen, we built a kitchen that had a lot of cartoon colors in it, mm-hmm. blues and yellows and greens and stuff. So I think when we were shooting, we thought we had something a little unique, but never did I believe it would go on to do, 8 sequels. But there was a point when I was pretty excited.
And did you have, I know you kind of said, you never had any idea that it would spawn so many sequels, but was there ever intention from you to have a sequel?
Oh yeah. I mean, I wrote it to have a sequel. I mean, those movies in those days, there were video stores, and they would make these low budget movies, and they didn't care if it went theatrical. They would sell 50,000 VHSs at the video stores, and at $50 the VHS, that's like $2.5 million or whatever it is, $1.5 million. So they would make these movies for $1 million and get a return of $1.5 million to $2.5 million. But you always make it hoping you'll get another sequel and they'll rent that one. And but when we started cutting the picture and testing it, Trimark said this could go theatrical. This is kind of, they actually went out. It was never intended to be a theatrical. It was going to go straight to video. And then they tested it and did market tests, and then they went out, and it for its budget, it did very well, which helped push the VHS videos in the video stores, because once you get a theatrical all over the country, then the video stores and people want to rent it. So, but we always intended to have a sequel. And very quickly, once the numbers came in, Trimark said, let's do another one. And then once we did number 2, I had a sense that we were going to get more, because the kids liked it and they kept renting it. And so yeah, we planned on it, as you do with all horror movies. You want sequels, but I just didn't, it was a pleasant surprise that it ended up having so many sequels.
Yeah, that was another question that I had, actually. When the movie came out and it's moving all these copies into video stores and stuff, how did that feel for you? And then what was the kind of, I guess, the behind the scenes conversations about what had happened?
Behind the scenes with what, the executives, or
with everybody involved, yourself, your opinion on what was going on, and then I guess whoever in Trimark and anybody else that was involved. Was it was it, it's go time now, it's time to get moving?
Well, yeah, they were very happy. I went to the movie theaters in LA and sat with my producing partner, Michael Prescott. We'd go and watch the audience watch the movie. But when it went to the video stores, there were posters and they had a lot of copies. So it was exciting. And there's a good residual base that the Writers Guild had. So I was starting to get some pretty good checks from the VHS sales. So that started to come in the mail, and it was really doing well. So everybody was kind of happy. They realized they had a franchise, and like all studios, they kind of fight you on everything and don't really care about your movie. And then when it starts to do business, then they kind of want to take all the credit and control it. And I had a deal with them that I would be attached to all the sequels, but my partner and I, we were producers on number 2. I didn't really have anything to do with the others other than getting the created by and ownership. But I went off after number 2. I went off to do Rumplestilskin for Dino De Laurentiis and another horror movie. And so I made a deal with Trimark that they could continue to make them, and I didn't have to write and direct them all. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they were happy because they could control it. And I wanted to move on and do other stuff. So as long as I had a financial interest, so that was fine. But it is funny, once it became sort of their biggest franchise, it's funny how they forget the guy who brought them the movie and mm-hmm. sort of made it work. But that's standard Hollywood dealings, I remember that the script was turned down twice by the acquisitions people, and I won't give their names because I'm actually friends with one of them. I still communicate now and then, but they turned it down twice. And the only reason Leprechaun got picked up is Mark Amin, was the head of Trimark, he somehow got the script and he said, why aren't we doing this movie? Oh, and of course the executives didn't want to say that they turned it down.
Mm-hmm.
So, so they made the movie. But it's funny how stories change when a movie becomes successful.
It's funny because Rumpelstiltskin was something else I was going to ask you about. Because that's another movie, maybe not so much like Leprechaun, but that movie now even has this huge cult following online. And I mean, Leprechaun even more so. Like I would put the Leprechaun character and franchise up there with, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees. And it still seems today, like in 2021, that people are still crying out for anything Leprechaun. And I don't know if you've recently seen the Darren Lynn Bousman, who just done the new Spiral movie for Lionsgate. He has spent like the last year begging to do a Leprechaun movie.
Yeah, I am aware of that. Yeah. It amazes me. I love it, and I feel honored to be in the category of a horror franchise that people still, I mean, I get 15, 16-year-old kids that discover Leprechaun and they watch it on TV and they love it. And you mentioned Rumplestiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin I liked that movie, and that should have had a bunch of sequels, but that was one of those. I guess it's not a sad story, but it was supposed to go out in a big theatrical. Excuse me. Dino De Laurentiis gave me the money to make it, and it was a bigger budget, and it had a little more action and stuff. And I guess Spelling Entertainment picked it up for domestic, and they were based at Paramount, and Paramount was going to go out big. And to make a long story short, they ended up closing up Spelling Entertainment's movie division because it was Aaron Spelling's company, and they really wanted the television shows. So we were the last movie that had a deal to go theatrical, and we were supposed to go big theatrical, and I think we would have absolutely had a sequel, if not many. But since they closed the division, they said, what's the minimum we can get away with to fulfill our contract? And I think it was like 300 theaters, so they went out in 300 theaters. And it did very well on videotape. I mean, it did, and VHS and foreign, but it didn't get the exposure that I wish it would have. Even though I find a lot of people, really liked Rumpelstiltskin and really, it creeped a lot of people out. So it's one of those. We oddly enough, somebody came to me and was talking about doing a sequel to Rumpelstiltskin now, and we got a hold of Paramount, who has the rights, with Dino. Dino De Laurentiis passed away, but his wife still runs the company, and
mm-hmm.
she would have done it. She said, I'm fine with that idea, and Paramount wasn't interested.
Wow.
And we said, you don't have to pay for it. Just that, I guess it's co-owned by Paramount and Dino. I said, we have some investors that might want to put in money. It's free money. What do you care? And it's just one of those stories, but maybe it'll still happen.
That was something I was going to ask, because I would, and I know that there's hundreds of thousands of people who I know would agree straight away, if not more, that that's always something I always wondered, how or why that didn't get multiple sequels, because it seemed like it had so much potential. And for, I see it now even in the horror community. I mean, that movie came out in 95, I think it was. People still talk about that today. And I do think there's a huge potential there to see that brought to life again.
Listen, I agree, and I'm pleased to hear that that people still react to it. It's it's dealing with the business of Hollywood and the creative side of Hollywood. I'm amazed anything gets done, but yeah, I mean, I think it would. I think it'd be great, and I had some great ideas for a sequel. So if I can just, if anybody knows anybody at Paramount Business Affairs, let us go do it. It's free money to them. But,
that's one of the questions that somebody actually sent me in to ask was, would you like to see Rumpelstiltskin brought out in the modern day, or is there any potential for that to happen? So that answers that question. Yeah,
well, we thought about it. we are actively thinking about it. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it.
There was something else, and I'll probably be shot if I don't ask this question. But I had so many people reach out to me when I mentioned your name about potential Leprechaun crossovers and ideas for different movies. There is a what I can only assume is a fan-made trailer online somewhere that has Leprechaun versus Wishmaster. Are you aware of that?
I think I've seen it. I think I also think they did a Leprechaun and Chucky trailer. A fan did. I think they did that. But yeah, I've seen them both.
Was Leprechaun and Wishmaster ever a consideration?
Well, I believe that one was talked about. I believe it was talked about at one time. I heard some rumblings about it. I think because, and I think, and correct me if you know, was Wishmaster a Trimark picture?
Yes.
Okay, so Trimark originally owned Leprechaun. They then, Lionsgate bought Trimark, so they own Leprechaun now. But I think that's why it was talking about doing Wishmaster and Leprechaun, because the same studio, Trimark, had the rights to both. Mm-hmm. So I think there was some talk about it. But it never got, I don't think, beyond the talking stages as far as I know.
Because there's another story out there as well about a Candyman and Leprechaun crossover. And again, I'm not sure how true that is, that Tony Todd apparently was the one who got that whole thing halted. I don't know if that's a rumor or that's actual fact.
I read some stuff on that, the same thing that you're saying. I don't know. That would to me is a little odd to bring in Candyman and Leprechaun, I think. But I always kind of liked Chucky and Leprechaun. I thought that would be interesting. But I think the Tony guy probably wished Candyman had a different tone to it, I think, than Leprechaun. Maybe he thought he didn't want to make Candyman silly or funny or bring some of the humor. Maybe he thought it would have, it wouldn't have matched as well. But I heard the same thing you did, but I don't have any secret inside info on it.
Because I had seen with Darren Lynn Bousman, wanting to do this. I think he wants to do a Leprechaun reboot, as far as I know.
Who does?
The director of the new Spiral movie?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and he had said that he wants to completely reboot the series, and he has a story, or wants to center the story around the Colorado Gold Rush.
Yes, I did hear that.
Yeah, which I think is quite unique. But there's, I think the most talked about a spin-off or something connected to the Leprechaun franchise, that anytime anybody looks online or in any of the message boards or forums or anything like that, that people always talk about, is something that you were attached to, which is Vamprechaun.
Yes, yeah. They just actually there was just a recent Bloody Disgusting had done a little thing on that. They called me. Yeah, it was basically a vampire bites a leprechaun and turns the leprechaun into a small little vampire with half leprechaun, half vampire. And it's a fun idea. And I have had a discussion with Warwick about doing it. He wanted to sort of stay away from horror for a while. He wanted his kids to be older, and he was doing other stuff in England. And but the timing might be right, and we will definitely talk to him if we get it going. But that would be a unique franchise because it's an original hybrid creation from public domain characters of vampire and leprechaun. So I think it would be kind of interesting, and so that sort of has bubbled back. We actually had a green light on that movie, but if you've read any of the stuff, we had a producer who tried to claim some ownership, and the money went away. We ended up having to sue him. We won the lawsuit 100%, but by that time the money went away, and there's articles online about it, but I think we're going to get that one made.
Yeah.
And I also have a great idea. So I'm giving, it might be a scoop. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I always wanted to bring the leprechaun's wife back.
Oh, nice.
And nobody knows, but leprechaun, there is no female leprechauns in folklore, but I was going to, and I actually had a thought that Warwick could play his wife in drag, so to speak. He would be made up to be a female, and he would play his wife and him. And it would, and she's looking for him. And that's originally what I wanted to do with Leprechaun is somehow bring in a leprechaun's wife and have some fun with it. A little bit like Bride of Chucky.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's my idea. So if anybody steals it, they're going to have to talk to me. But I was also thinking of bringing in a female Vamprechaun, or bringing the female leprechaun into the Vamprechaun. So her husband has now been turned into a vampire leprechaun, and have some fun with it. And that's one of the things we're talking about if we get Vamprechaun going, is to finally bring in a female leprechaun.
And you're, I guess, nothing is a sure deal, I guess, but you're pretty confident, and that's something that you're actively looking to get going, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, we have, people come to us, and we've had actual deals presented. A lot of the issue is money. These movies don't need a lot of, they don't need $40 million, $100 million budgets. But we wanted to make it a budget high enough where we could get a theatrical quality, and so nothing has been greenlit in this town. Even when something's greenlit, it's not greenlit. But yeah, we're talking. It's just kind of it's bubbled up again for some reason. It's weird how these things can just sit on the shelf for a few years and then they come back. So we're actively trying to get that done. So
is there any other? Somebody wanted me to ask you. Is there any other franchise or character that you would have liked to have been involved with, or still would?
You mean a new one? You mean a new concept?
No, like an exist. I from what I assume, they mean an existing IP. So whether that be a Chucky or whatever horror character, is there something that ever stuck out to you that you would have liked to have been involved with?
I like Chucky a lot. That was one of my favorites. I like the Chucky, the first one that came out, and of course the sequels. I sort of am attracted more to that one, like a straight ahead uh, a Jason wouldn't necessarily be as interesting to me because he's kind of a, you know, I like something that sort of pushes the envelope or has a little humor into it. You know, I like the Freddy Krueger guy. I mean, I like that, but I would say, I mean, I like creating original stuff.
Yeah.
You know, but if somebody said, you know, we're going to do a Chucky movie, another one, and they want me to do it, it would be fun to do. Probably that's the one I'd be focused on. I also liked Critters. If you remember that movie, I think it was Critters. I thought was a pretty interesting movie. It was those little characters, and I think they did do a Critters too.
Yeah, and recently I think we had Critters Attack, which was a TV movie from maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah, I didn't see that. So
yeah, I guess it was much lower budget, but I think it was quite well received, just because people liked the idea of the character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's another movie that you had done that I personally don't think gets talked about enough, which is Trilloquist.
Trilloquist, that's an interesting movie. It did well in foreign. Not Weinstein's picked it up way before anybody knew about Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
But the company Dimension Extreme, which the Weinsteins had owned, they picked it up for domestic, and we were DVDs, and we got in Blockbuster, and they had and it went around. It doesn't play on TV here as much, I think, because I own it now, and so I probably should get it out there, because I don't. You know, that was a strange, weird little movie that I had fun doing. It was an interesting backstory, but we you know, I just wanted to do something a little bizarre and weird with a little ventriloquist dummy and the girl, and you know, it's kind of Natural Born Killers meets Chucky, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody once described it, but it was you know, somebody said, you know, we gave me the money and said, go make this movie, this movie I wrote, and I said, okay. It was just it's interesting. It was a little bizarre, but
where did the idea for that movie come from? Because I personally love it, and I'm surprised that it hasn't gotten out there more, because just when you had mentioned earlier you prefer to do original characters, original stories, this again feels like, I mean, you know, we've had Leprechaun, you know, you've been involved with Rumplestilskin, which I think is another cult classic, and then I feel like, you know, a certain amount of years pass and we're in the 2000s, and this movie comes out, and I just feel like it maybe didn't get a fair shout. I feel like it could have been bigger than maybe it ended up being.
Yeah, it had some weird music in it. It was, I guess it was just since the Dimension Extreme, you know, came out with it, and it did pretty well on video in the beginning and DVD, but it just didn't get the TV exposure, and there also they to get an R rating, and the one thing I was disappointed, there were a couple of, and I think the foreign version had my original cut, but the MPAA made us cut some things, and it was that I think hurt the picture. There were about 5 or 6 edits made that were unnecessary. They thought it was too gory, and it was a dumb a dumb move, but for some reason it didn't. It's not out on TV. It may be now my fault because I think it came out in '08 and they had a 10-year deal, and I think the foreign and domestic, it's now back to me. So I should probably call Sci-Fi and see if they want to make a deal to license it. Maybe get it on American television and get it back out there. Yeah, it was surprised me that it did. I didn't think it got a fair shot.
And does that
some people hate it, some people love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and if it really feels like one of those movies, and I was just going to ask, with I guess with you having control of it again, does that give you the power to re-release it, say on Blu-ray or whatever?
Yes, I mean it would. Yeah, I mean it would it gives me the ability to do anything with it.
Because that's
we shot it on 35.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it would make we shot it on 35 millimeter, and so the Blu-ray would be beautiful. I think we did a high def. It was right at that moment. '08, I think we gave them a high def version, but they only came out on standard DVD. But somewhere the film is somewhere. I'm not even sure what the negatives are, which would break my heart if we can't find them. But yeah, it would. So it would be. I would have the ability to do it, and or certainly license it to television. Then see what the reaction is, and then maybe I don't know. It's something that has popped up since one of my attorneys reminded me that their deal expired in about 2018, 19, and so I always thought that could have a sequel. I still have the dummy, the original dummy in my office.
Wow.
So he's got a bunch of animals. We can talk and blink his eyes. We had about 4 of them, but yeah, I thought that could be a fun little sequel.
Yeah, I feel like, and that's why I mention the Blu-ray and stuff, because I feel like that there's so many movies like this that maybe didn't get a fair shot that could have a huge cult following if it gets that bit of exposure. And like you've got I see companies now like Severin Films, 88 Films in the UK and Europe, and they re-release and bring out some of these movies that maybe didn't get a fair, and the reaction always seems to be huge. Like they seem to gain such momentum, and I really feel like that this is one of those movies that deserves, I guess, the definitive edition or collector's edition Blu-ray or whatever you want to call it, and potentially maybe even see a sequel. I would love to see more of that story.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you feeling that way, and yeah, I would love to, and I it's that stuff. It all falls by the wayside. You get involved in other projects, and then somebody like you mentions it, and I go, shoot, I should try to resurrect that or do something like that. Mm-hmm. I actually thought for a short bit, I was talking to some of my partners on some other projects I'm doing, and I said we should do like a sci-fi television show of Trilloquist,
yeah.
where this ventriloquist dummy travels around with somebody, bring in some other people. Since the brother and sister died, and have him, do like a Triloquist TV series,
mm-hmm.
like kind of creepy horror, some fun, and he basically goes around killing people, and whoever I team him up with, I haven't come up with the concept, but I toyed with an idea of, and I think it'd be great for like sci-fi, like a Triloquist little live action TV series on it.
And I feel like now, especially in this age, and maybe even since the pandemic and stuff as well, but you've got things like Sci-Fi, which every now and again has these huge hits, I would call them in a way, especially among the community. You've got things like Shudder. So many people watch these. I mean, Shudder have the Creep Show reimagining or whatever, right. and like that's been so popular. And I just think there's a good market for, because I really feel like they don't make movies like this anymore. These are original, kind of quirky, kind of bizarre, odd characters. Like the dummy, Rumplestiltskin is another one. Leprechaun is another one. Just, I don't know. There's something. I think there's a huge appeal for that kind of movie.
I agree with you. I think you're right on. You stay around long enough and things resurrect and can work even better than before. I agree. I think the timing now would be great for these kind of movies, and Trilloquist I would put right up there. I actually have a big Trilloquist poster behind my my couch in the office. which you could have seen if we were on Skype.
I know, right? I actually have 2 copies of that movie. I have the US version, and then I want to say it's a Japanese version, where the artwork is slightly different. That's one of those things when I really like a movie, and I know, and that's why I mentioned the Blu-ray. There's so many people like that out there where they have to have every edition of a movie if they like it, even if it's only slight differences.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite horror movies, I guess, now, or do you still watch a lot of horror?
It's funny. I'll catch I'll catch it. I'll catch the horror movies when they come out. I'll see them eventually, all of them, or most of them. It's I'm trying to think. I'm not like a horror nut. I like I have a very eclectic taste on movies. I like all kinds of interesting movies. I like La La Land a lot, which maybe is odd for a horror writer director. I thought that was actually a really good movie. I thought it was interesting the way he did that. But there's nothing specific that comes to mind. I mean, the first Paranormal was interesting. I actually caught The Invisible Man, the new one.
Yeah.
That was interesting. That was interesting.
I know they're going to take over. I want to say they're doing Dracula or Wolfman next. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, I think Blumhouse is that the guy. I think he's doing that stuff. I go from the cheesiest, cheapest '80s horror to high end stuff. I like them all. I don't necessarily. The only favorites, of course, are mine. But I like them, and but I always I like something. I like the odd ones. I like a little odd. The straight ahead horror can work, but I always attracted to the weird.
Yeah.
Kind of the weird ones, and
I feel like a lot of those have started in recent years to come back around. Like we just talked about, movies that maybe didn't get a fair showing at the time are hopefully now going to get more exposure. How do you feel about things like Netflix, Amazon Prime? these things being so popular now. I think they were a savior in a way during the pandemic, but how do you see that versus, going to the theater and watching a movie?
Well, I love theaters, and I love having gotten movies in the theaters, and that's to me the best. But I think the reality of life now, everyone has big screen TVs, high def. It used to be you went to the movies because you had these little black and white TVs, or even if you had a color TV, the color was never that good, so you went to the movies to see crystal clear, big screen movies. And now people are getting projections, 100 inches, 85-inch TVs, and the sound is great. Excuse me. And so I think what's happened now with the streaming is that people basically have their home theaters, and they invite some friends over, and couples will sit and watch the movies. And I think, unfortunately, theaters are going to they're going to diminish because, number one, it's cheaper to, you can buy a first-run movie on a Friday night, for $20 or even $30, and 4 or 5 people can watch it versus going to a theater and paying $15 a piece. And you don't have to leave the house. You don't have to go, hang out. So I think because of the quality that's come through the streaming services and high def TVs, that people are going to basically go to the movies at home. I predicted that a while ago. There's still an excitement of going into a theater with a bunch of people and watching a movie. But I think for the most part, people are now looking at television the same way they looked at movies. It's like the quality's there. And again, you don't have to leave the house. If people go, I can stay home, I can drink, I don't have to worry about drinking and driving. And so, I think that's the future is, and so things like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon are, they're making major studio pictures and just releasing it on their platforms, and it seems to be working. And the other benefit is you don't have to share with the theaters. When a studio releases a movie, they got to share half the income with the theaters. If Universal releases it on their streaming service, they keep most of the money. So I think it's opened up to do more things. Like we could go to Netflix with Triloquist. We could go to Hulu and say, do you want to do the movie? So I think there are more outlets now. So I think it's good for filmmakers, except my, so my partners and I we were talking, I used to, when there were just a handful of places where you could show your movies, there were like 3-4 networks, and that was it. I said, now they've got streaming services where they're making 1,000 TV series, and it seems to be harder to get a show now than it ever was, even though they're buying more than they've ever bought. So it's kind of ironic,
Yeah, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword in a way, really. Because trying to get through that noise, then I guess, is kind of harder. The only thing I fear is, I personally love because to me, going to the movies was always the experience as well. And especially with a horror movie, I always kind of wanted my initial viewing to be in that setting for some reason, and maybe just feed off the crowd and kind of, there's a bit of an atmosphere, I guess, especially with scary movies. And I guess the fear for somebody like me is that, that ends up being like a Blockbuster, where, it kind of just becomes a thing of the past. It was, I guess teenagers nowadays can't understand that, people used to go to a store and you would have to just browse the shelf and pick a movie, and even if it was terrible, you kind of just saw it through because you've already rented it.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, I love the movies. And I don't think they'll ever go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the pandemic has created a lot of fear of sitting in a theater and people, so once we get back, and hopefully we will get back 100% to normal. I don't want to see, people running around in fear, and, hopefully the masks will go away, and then we can, then it'd be the theaters, I think, will stay around. I just think it's financially, the studios and the filmmakers are finding it, financially sometimes easier not to go theatrical. I mean, Leprechaun was $1 million movie, and they spent, $4 or $5 million in advertising to put it in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
So, it costs a lot of money to put things out in movie theaters. Now you just, it costs you nothing to put it on a streaming service. So, but I think theaters will stay around. I just think it's going to change a little bit. But I agree with you. I sitting in a theater with a bunch of people. There was nothing greater than going into the movie theater and sitting in the back when Leprechaun came out.
Yeah.
And we had sold out theaters, which amazed me. And my partner and I would just sit there and listen to people laugh and, do, and it was great. There's nothing greater than watching an audience watch your movie. So I'm in agreement with you on that.
There was another question that had cropped up. A couple of people had asked for, and I'm assuming you probably had this maybe, years ago when this was all just a dream, I guess. A couple of people had asked me, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to follow a dream like that? Doesn't want to work a regular 9 to 5, is trying to, whether it be get into the film business in any avenue, really. What advice would you give to someone?
I would give the advice to do whatever you have to do to get into the business. My parents were going, don't you want to go to college? And I go, well, my college is going to be learning how to make movies. I'm going to get a PhD in movie making. And I just got in, like I said, right out of high school. And I just wanted to, I did everything. I Xeroxed, I was a PA, just get exposure to the industry, whatever you have to do, and don't give it up. I know so many people that, they had families and they had to get jobs and they gave up their dream, because I think, you'll regret it the rest of your life if you have a dream. I have a bunch of guys, we go and smoke cigars at this cigar place, I think I mentioned. And, if you have 10 people and you ask them, if you had a magic wand and you could be anything, your life could be exactly what you want, would the job you have be the job that you would wish for if you had a magic wand? And about 9 out of 10 people say no. And I'm talking about attorneys and bankers and real successful people. And most of them, 9 out of 10 go, well, I really wanted to be a rock and roller, or I really wanted to write movies, or I wanted to direct, or I wanted to be an actor. And it's very sad. I think people give up on their dreams because life gets in the way. So my advice is to just, as a kid, I used to see them make movies because I grew up in California. So I would see them make movies as like 13, 14 years old. Mm-hmm. And I would ask my dad to drop me off, and I would just stand there for hours and watch guys move cables. And I used to say, if I could just move a cable on a movie, be on the crew, I would have done anything. And I think, you have to have that attitude of I just want to get in and do whatever you have to do and get in it, whatever level you have to get in on. And the other bit of advice that I was given, is a person said to me, if you want to create a career in the business, write. Learn to write. Now, not everybody can write, but that is the best way to make anything happen. Case in point, I was a writer. I started in animation and then television, and I became a producer. But it was basically a writer, and I wrote Leprechaun, and the only reason they let me direct it is because I wrote the script and I owned it, and they offered me a lot more money not to direct Leprechaun. They said, we'll give you a lot more money for the script, and let's bring in a experienced director, because I'd never directed before. And I said, no. I said, the only reason I wrote the script is to direct the movie. I wanted to be on a set and make a movie. So I actually took less money for the script to be able to direct. So the power of creating your own concept is really, is the best and best way to do something. Is this whole town is run on scripts. No matter what happens, if you've got a great script or a script that they want to do, you can dictate anything you want. So that's my advice, is to not give up and or find material. If you're not a writer, find somebody who's a great writer and option the script or get a hold of it. But material is everything. Nothing works in this town without a script. And in my opinion, it's the hardest job in the world, is writing. The reason I wanted to be a director is it's easier. even though I write what I direct, writing is the hardest thing in the world to do, but it can be the biggest payoff.
It's really refreshing to hear you say that about not to give up and to really do whatever you've got to do to see that thing out. Because I do think, and it's exactly like you said, a lot of people, just life gets in the way. And so many people that I've talked to and asked, for advice or picked their brain have always told me it will never be the things that you've done that you'll end up regretting. It's the things that you didn't do, the chance you didn't take. And like so many people reach out to me every week, with different guests, and this question always comes up, about how did you make it happen, or how did you, and I do think a lot of it, obviously, talent and skill comes into it, but I think a lot of times what differentiates who makes these things and who doesn't is just sheer determination, will, and somebody told me recently that, if you've got a dream but you can see yourself doing something else, then it's not, don't put yourself through it. But if you really can't see yourself doing anything else and being happy, then you should do whatever you can do.
I 100% agree with you, and it's interesting you say that. I used to say when I was a kid, because I started making little movies at 13, 14 years old, and I said to somebody, I said, in 30 years from now, if my name's in the phone book, I'm going to be in the movie business. It's like, it's the only thing I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And to this day, when I walk onto a set, get my cup of coffee and you hear the generators going, it's just something. As a kid, I just loved it. And I said, and I meant this, I said, if somebody said all I could make is, $10,000 a year, but I could direct movies, I would rather do that than make $1 million a year selling cars or working in an office, and I really meant that, and fortunately you can make some money in the business, but I never got into it for money. I just wanted to make movies, and it's the thing that gives you butterflies, I've done a lot in this career. I've had a long career, and I drive by and I see locations. I see the trailers and the cameras and stuff. I'm driving by. They shoot all the time in LA, and I still get excited. It's not even my movie. I'm just driving. I'm driving to a grocery store and I see a movie set, and the fact that I can still have that kind of youthful excitement tells me that that's what I'm doing. That there's nothing else I would want to do but what I'm doing. And if you have that job, you're the luckiest guy in the world. And there's and there are people, I'm sure baseball players, rock and rollers, it doesn't have to be movie making, but those are the people who usually are the happiest.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that are doing the only thing that they ever wanted to do. And also I do believe determination can even supersede talent. I mean, you definitely have to have a talent, but you can get better. You're a better writer. Every script you write makes you better. Every picture you direct, you get better. So you can learn to get good if you really, really have the desire.
Mm-hmm.
So, my example is if I could end up having a career as a writer director, then believe me, it's easy. It's not that tough. But I don't think you have to have anything magical. You just have to really have the desire.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, especially now in modern day, I think it's becoming increasingly hard for people to really define what it is they want, because they see things on social media or whatever, and they think they want to get involved in it because of that. And I just don't think that's the reason. Like, I think someone should just really sit down and think, what's the one thing I want to do for the rest of my life that I couldn't see myself doing anything else. And I've definitely had that exact same talk with myself. And, it had gotten to a point where I had spent so many years on the fence with these safety nets and kind of thinking, next year is going to be the year I'm going to do this thing I want to do, or the year after is going to be. And it's like, at some point you've got to either, I guess, extinguish that dream or just completely go for it. And I genuinely couldn't see myself doing anything else with my life than what I'm doing right now. And I don't see myself ever stopping. And much like yourself, like you said, you've had a long and extremely successful career, and you don't sound like somebody who's ready to punch out anytime soon.
To what? I'm sorry, the last sentence?
You don't sound like somebody who's ready to just pack it in anytime soon. I can still hear your voice.
Oh yeah, listen, I've never grown up. Listen, I hope it's a long time from now. But it'd be the best thing if I ever pass away. I would like to do it on a movie set. But having shot the last shot, I don't. There's no such thing as retirement. To me, retirement is like, why would you retire from something you love? That's like saying I'm going to stop living life.
Mm-hmm.
And and the great thing is you can you can write, you can work. I mean, the creative area of life, you do it till you die.
Mm-hmm.
You try and stay healthy, and you can make anything happen. I worked with a guy, Glenn A. Larson, who created Magnum and Knight Rider and Battlestar Galactica. He brought me into the business at prime time, and he used to say, because he sold so many shows, if you look at his history, and he used to say to me, I will it to happen. When I go into a network, I use my mind and will them to buy my show. And he meant it. And, and he was an interesting guy. I learned a lot from him, and he just had such a desire to accomplish that he just like magically willed it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I always remembered that. So too many people give up.
Yeah, definitely.
Can't give up.
Definitely. That kind of leads me on to one of my final questions, I guess, which would be, what does the future look like for you? Or is there anything that you can talk about, or maybe aspirations or goals you've got going forward?
Yeah, I actually, because I tend to be eclectic, and I actually have a movie, a script that is a complete departure from from the horror genre. It's kind of in the vein, I'm going to say, leaving Las Vegas, Sling Blade,
Oh, nice.
and it's just an idea I've had for like 20 years. I have done a number of drafts, and I keep meaning to get back to it, but then I get pulled into other stuff, that paid work. But so you might see a very interesting, different movie from me, and also we have some pilots we're developing for one, believe it or not, is a sitcom uh, that has some attachments to it. I can't talk about it, but
Mm-hmm.
so I've actually might end up doing some TV, uh, and we've got a number of things that were in development. But in our town, everybody's in development. But these are real things, um, and I still want to do Vamprechaun. I'd love to do another horror movie like that, and there's a whole bunch. I never stop coming up with ideas and things to do, and they get done. Sometimes it takes time, but they get done. Uh, and I I just keep going. I
Is
keep going. So there's actually a lot of stuff going on, believe it or not.
is is Vamprechaun you have something fully fleshed out for?
Yeah, we have a script.
You have like a
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
yeah, we have a pretty good script. I will do a rewrite on it, bring in some other elements. But that's ready to go. Like I said, we had somebody a few years back that was, I mean, literally it was greenlit.
Mm-hmm.
The deals were made. The money was going to be wire transferred in, and then it fell apart. So we'll get that one back. Uh, but yeah, I've never woken up without 6 or 7 things that I need to do, and I think the key is you have to develop 10 things to get 2 made.
Yeah.
So you can't just I have guys that I've known, they wrote one script and they've been trying to sell this script for 20 years, and I go put it in a drawer, write another one, do another one. You've gotta have a it's a numbers game. Develop 10 scripts. Maybe if you sell 2 of them, that's a home run.
Mm-hmm.
So
and the process for you, when you come up, because you've come up with a lot of unique and original concepts. Is that something that I guess pops into your mind throughout the day and you jot down things, or do you sit down and have like a creative brainstorm?
Things come to mind all the time. I'll be walking down the street or taking a walk and smoking a cigar, and I'll look over and I'll see a squirrel climb up a tree, and I'll get an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't actually sit down and say I need to come up with an idea. They're out there. I am the kind of writer that when I sit down, and like all writers, it's miserable to sit at a keyboard. But when I do force myself to sit down in my office and write, I tend to write very quickly, and I spit everything out. I don't belabor over something. If I'm writing and I don't know where the structure of the story's going, I just fake it. I'll just force myself to write something. Then I go back and do big rewrites.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe in just getting a draft done. Just sit down and get your 100 pages done, and worry. and then I love rewriting. Then you come up and you read it and you do your notes and you rewrite. I know a lot of writers want to get every page perfect, and they belabor over things. And I think the best way to write personally is to just get your fingers on the keyboard and just spit out as much and as fast as you can, and then go back and keep, chiseling and making it, work. So that's just my style. I'm sure everybody finds something that works for them. But, yeah.
And as regards, I think there's so many people, you had mentioned before about, your parents saying, do you not want to go to college and different things like that? And, you just wanted to, I guess, get stuck in, essentially. I feel like that nowadays a lot more people are leaning towards that. They maybe don't want to do the college route. I guess your traditional way of doing things. They want to just go out and, try and get experience, work some shitty jobs, write at nighttime and whatever. For somebody like that, what would you recommend, I guess, for somebody who's creative story-wise and maybe idea-wise, but doesn't have the framework of actually writing a script?
I'll tell you, I have great advice on this. When I was, excuse me, I was going in the 80s when I was doing TV. We didn't have the internet, so we didn't have access to a lot of scripts. I mean, I had access to scripts in the television world, but there was in Hollywood there was a script store that you could actually go to, and they had Xerox copies of movie scripts from the 50s and the 40s and current ones, and you could buy them. They were like $15, $20. And I would go with my writer friend, and we would go, oh, there's the Terminator script, or there's, the Ghost of Mrs. Muir, which was a brilliantly written, if you want to learn how to write dialogue, the writer escapes my name, but it was the original Ghost of Mrs. Muir, brilliantly written script. And I would buy the scripts and read them. And my recommendation is read good scripts. And now with the internet, they're so available to people. Sit down and read them and see what works, see why it works. And that is, to me, better than a college education. Just read a script that's good and make yourself understand why it works. Oh, I see why they went from this scene to that scene. Read the dialogue. How good the dialogue is, how crisp and clean, and, because I read, people give me scripts all the time, or they used to, and friends would have a friend, could I read the script? And they were just terrible. And I said, this guy's never read a good script, because if you read good scripts and they're out there, you would never write a script like this. So I think that's the best advice, is to get a hold of a movie that you loved, TV show, whatever, and just, find copies. They're all over the internet, and read scripts. To me, that's your college education.
Mm-hmm. And that's one that is not going to cost anybody anything other than just time and patience, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually got on the internet and downloaded scripts for free. Some movie. I said, I wonder if that script's around. I mean, it used to be agents would give you scripts, like, when I was in the 80s, sometimes you'd call your agent and he could get you a script from another agency. But today, there's no excuse not to do your homework. And it's, a lot of people think they can write because they watch movies and they like movies. And a lot of the stuff is just, it's unprofessional and it's not good. And those are people who didn't study the craft of writing. And the best way to study it is to read good scripts, and and it's right there for anybody. So there's no excuse not to learn how to be a good writer if that's what you really want to do, in my opinion.
And I think that's really practical advice as well, because I do know that I get asked to ask that question an awful lot. That people, don't have the money to go to college or go to some of these crazy courses, and I think that turns a lot of people off. They feel like, if I don't do that, I can't learn or I can't figure it out.
No. Listen, I used to read books. I mean, I used to go to the library and get books on screenwriting, and there's some good books out there. I think David Mamet, great writer, he wrote a book, and you can be amazed. I mean, what college is basically reading. You buy college books and you read. Well, they're out there. I mean, they're accessible. It's not expensive. So there's really no excuse not to learn the craft. I think the problem with a lot of young kids is that everybody's got access to an iPhone and a camera, and they just go out and they start making a movie. They don't even have a script. They just go, okay, I'm going to get my friends together and make a movie. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying you've got to do your homework, and not only read good scripts, then watch the movie and see how they interpreted the script, see how it was shot. I watch movies all the time, and I constantly see a great camera move, a great shot. And I go, wow, that's interesting. It's really just study the craft, and it's there for everybody to see. If you wanted to learn how to weld pipes, you really can't, you have to go out and watch them weld pipes, and that's not practical. But our business is the only business where you can see what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Just, watch movies and see what's good, what's bad, what's a good shot, what's a bad shot. And so in a sense, it's the most accessible, arena to learn is the movie business, because it's out there. Anybody can watch a movie, and so that to me is the key if you really want to do it.
So final question then, I guess, to wrap things up. I think we've covered what you're looking to do with the future and different things like that. Is there anywhere you see the Leprechaun franchise going, or anywhere you'd like to see it going? Would you like to take it over again? The
last one they did, Leprechaun Returns. It was a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, the new actor escapes me.
Lyndon Parco. I actually had him on the show recently.
Oh, okay. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, he did.
I thought he captured the tone, and they went back to the original Leprechaun, which is, which they should have done from number 2, but and I thought coming back to the farmhouse and even bringing Mark Holton back, the Ozzy character, who I'm friends with. I talk to him all the time. He lives in Oklahoma, but he's a great guy. I thought that was very good, and I would love to see them do a sequel. I don't know if they're going to, but they set it up. And, I thought outside of Warwick, I thought he did a really good job. And, listen, I get paid every time they make one. So of course I want them to make a sequel.
Mm-hmm. And that was very well received as well, that movie. And I was a bit skeptical as well, because I'm a huge Leprechaun fan. And I was a little bit skeptical, especially after what happened with Origins. But I really think they've done a really good job. And the director, I can't remember his name, Steve. I can't remember his surname, but he had another hit recently, Psycho Gorman. And I'd really like to see him flesh their version of this story out a bit more. I do think they've done a good job, and I hope they get to do a sequel.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. They shot it in South Africa.
Yeah,
I thought it worked. Yeah, I think it kind of, since it went back to the original, it kind of gave it fresh blood, and I think it's ripe, and I would like them to love to do a sequel. But I have ideas, and if they ever came to me and said, let's do another Leprechaun, I would entertain that.
Yeah.
At this point, it would be kind of fun if we brought Warwick back and myself. That could be interesting. Yeah. I'm amazed that 2018 they still did another Leprechaun,
Mm-hmm.
and the first one came out in '93. So I find it amazing, and it pleases me a lot, and I love the fact that the fans kind of got the movie, and so I'm all for it.
Yeah, I would love to see you come back on board, get Warwick back, and potentially maybe even allow Darren Lynn Bousman. I know he's been talking about this for the last year. I would love to see that original kind of creation be brought out again, and maybe when I say modern age, I don't mean have to bring it into modern day, but I would love to see Leprechaun get like a huge Lionsgate theatrical release. I would love to see that.
They could do it. They could do it. Maybe I'll call a favor into Jennifer Aniston and have her do a cameo.
That would be amazing.
She was in the first one.
Yeah.
If people remember, and that was before she did anything, and I'm the one that fought for her. I always, in an interview, I always mention that fact because I want Trimark to remember that I was the guy who was begging them to use Jennifer, and they kept wanting me to read other girls.
Mm-hmm.
And but I finally won that one, and of course they take the credit.
Of course, yeah. Now, of course, yeah. Yeah.
Now it's like, oh yeah, we knew Jennifer was the right one, and I have to bite my tongue and go, no, I seem to remember that you didn't. You wanted some other people, but I was the one who kept pushing. So I'll take credit for that.
And it's crazy to think that potentially, and I don't mean this in any offense to Jennifer Aniston or anything, but potentially maybe if you didn't fight for her, she mightn't have got her chance, and might not have had the career that she's had.
Yes, I keep reminding her of that, hoping she'll send me some money. She did great. Listen, she was a sweetheart, and she was wonderful, and it was her first picture. It was my first picture, and you always remember that fondly. But she certainly she deserves everything she's gotten. She's talented and wonderful, and I sometimes apologize to her for putting her in Leprechaun, but I think deep inside she's okay about it.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been fantastic to chat. Is there? I guess there's probably not much you can talk about right now. So I guess all I could say is, we'll keep in touch, and for everybody listening, if hopefully in the future there's an announcement for Vamprechaun and some of your other projects when you can talk about them, and I can share that with my audience so they can follow what you're doing in the future.
Well, I appreciate it. You were very good, and I enjoyed talking to you. You did a good job, so I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you taking the time as well. For everybody listening, as always, you can get the podcast on any podcast platform, iTunes. Leave a rating and review, and we'll see you in the next one.
Okay, and hopefully maybe we'll be able to get Skype so everyone can see how handsome I am.
Evil wears many masks, but pure horror wears only one. Support First Class Horror on Patreon for as little as $1. Can't get enough of the horror? Carve yourself a deal from official merchandise only on Teespring. Join us on all social media
at First Class Horror.
We have such sights to show you.